Good afternoon. I'm Bob Price, and welcome to a very special edition of the Noon Report. It's Independence Day, and we're setting aside our regular programming to bring you interviews and special features that highlight America's birthday. We'll begin with this question. What are we celebrating exactly when we celebrate the 4th of July? Historian Mark Diaz did some asking around. He beat the streets and got some rather interesting answers. You may be astonished by what he discovered about how little some of us know when it comes to how we as a nation were born. Take a listen.
What are we celebrating on the 4th of July exactly?
Our independence.
A little more specific.
It's the day that we overtook the South. And it's the day that it's our independence. That's why we have the fire.
From the South.
From the South, exactly.
So it was the victor of the Civil War?
Yes.
4th of July?
Yes.
The Declaration of Independence was signed by who?
I don't know.
Just name one person.
Abraham Lincoln? I don't know.
Sorry.
Not?
What year was that Declaration of
Was it
Independence?
1964? 84?
1984.
84? I don't know.
No. We're in trouble.
1864?
1860.
I don't know.
This country, no wonder this country's in trouble. Okay. What country did we declare our independence from?
Help me, baby.
Nope, just you. You're on your own.
California.
From.
Oh, from?
We declared independence from a certain country, which is why we celebrate 4th of July. What country was that?
I don't have no idea.
You're going to be celebrating, though?
Yes.
But you don't know what you're celebrating.
You're right.
Okay. That's tonight's homework assignment.
Okay.
Yeah, some of us need to brush up on our history for sure. In fact, a recent Marist College poll shows less than 6 in 10 Americans today know why we celebrate the 4th of July. Taking us to school on the matter is presidential historian Mark Updegrove.
Well, it started in Philadelphia with the Declaration of Independence being ratified by the Continental Congress, the Second Continental Congress. They had actually come to accord on a declaration just 2 days earlier, on July 2nd. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, two of our principal founding fathers, believed that July 2nd was the day that would be celebrated in history. But the date that was etched in the Declaration of Independence is, of course, July 4th, the day that it was ratified. It was a relatively uneventful day for the Congress, but that's what we remember because of the date on the Declaration. The American people really didn't know about the ratification of the document until several days later, and it was read outside of what is now Independence Hall on July 8th, and that was really when the first celebration of independence was held in our country.
And the rest, they say, is history. That's presidential historian Mark Updegrove. Interestingly enough, only since 1941, not that long ago, has July 4th been officially observed as a federal holiday in this country. 3 of our founding fathers, by the way, died on the 4th of July. Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and James Monroe. Jefferson and Adams died on the same day. For more insights and analysis on Independence Day 2025, we turn to Jenna Winterly Karras. She's a spokesperson for the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. I spoke with her earlier about America's birthday. America's birthday, the 4th of July. Got to ask you this question as we get out of the gates, Jenna. What are we celebrating exactly when we celebrate the 4th of July?
Sure. So the 4th of July was the day the Declaration of Independence was adopted. It was actually 2 days earlier, on July 2nd, that the Second Continental Congress voted for independence. In fact, there's a great letter that John Adams wrote Abigail, and he really described a modern Independence Day, you know, bonfires and illuminations, parades and shows, but he was saying that he thought the second day of July would be the day that they celebrated. But I think because they signed the Declaration, or they adopted the Declaration of Independence on the 4th, therefore that's the date that kind of appeared at the top of the document. But what we're celebrating, of course, is independence from Great Britain, and us as a nation kind of deciding that we are our own country, free and independent states, and we will govern ourselves. And so it was a really, really exciting moment in world history.
So we don't celebrate it on the 2nd because it wasn't ratified on the 2nd. It was the 4th that it was ratified. Is that why?
The vote for independence was on the 2nd, so that was when it really became official, and then we had to tell everybody. So that's Thomas Jefferson had been working on the Declaration, the kind of breakup letter to King George and the rest of the world. And so once they voted on independence, we're going to do this thing. Now we have to tell them, hey, I've got this document. What do you guys think? And they said, yep, that's a great one. Like, well, let's go with that. And they adopted it on the 4th of July.
I love that. The breakup letter. That's a wonderful way of putting it. It's talking about that document, the Declaration of Independence. It really is our birth certificate as a nation, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and it's such a beautiful, very poetic kind of statement that, we are our own country, and this is just kind of the facts. We are free and independent states. And then there is a famous list of grievances, like here's the reasons why King George, what he's done to wrong the colonies, and we're not going to, stand it anymore. And so we're going to, kind of become our own nation. We're going to govern ourselves. That's something that we have the, natural right to do.
Yeah. Jenna Winterly Karras at the National Constitution Center is with us as we celebrate America's birthday, the 4th of July. I'm a history geek, I'll admit it, Jenna, but even I sometimes get my documents confused. The difference between the U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, sometimes I think I'm reading from the Declaration of Independence when it's really the preamble of the Constitution. Can you explain the difference between those two documents?
Sure. Well, first of all, there's 11 years in between them. So the Declaration of Independence was that document that established ourselves as a new nation. We said we will no longer be British subjects, no longer behold to the king. We are a nation, of 13 states. We're going to govern ourselves. And so it was really kind of, you used the term birth certificate earlier. It really was kind of that founding, like, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And that a lot of, famous quotes, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. It's really a value. It's almost like a value document. It's saying, like, this is what we believe, this is who we are, this is, but it was not a governing document. It didn't set up the presidency or the judiciary or the Congress. It didn't say, like, how we would vote, how we would, what the laws of the land would be. So that's what we needed next.
Yeah.
And so the first governing document we had that came out of the Revolution was the Articles of Confederation, and they got us through the war. They got us kind of up and running, but then there was it wasn't quite perfect. There wasn't a lot of leeway in terms of amending it. So it was in 1787 that they called for a convention to say, like, okay, we have to, originally they were going to revise the Articles of Confederation, but they kind of realized they needed to write a new governing document. And so that's what the Constitutional Convention was. So 1787, it was a lot of the same guys, a lot of different guys, but Ben Franklin was there, Alexander Hamilton, George Washington, they all came to Philadelphia to really hammer out what our country's government was going to look like. And so they took that summer to create our government. And so that the famous kind of preamble that you referenced, the "We the people of the United States," in order to form a more perfect union, and they kind of outline what they're going to do, and then they do it in that document.
Gotcha. Now, correct my math, because I'm going to take a stab at this. There were 56 signers of the Declaration, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. So I've heard tell that this is just the incredible part of our history to make up, that these men were committing an act of treason against the English crown when they put their names on that parchment. Did you see it as that?
Well, technically, yes. I suppose you could say that. It was had we lost the revolution, it was like the story would be very different. But I see it as what they said in that document was true. It's like this is something we already believe to be true. This is we are free and independent states. We're just saying it out loud right now, and I think that that's really powerful to say. This doesn't have to be a big deal. This is just what we believe. And so I think that they, you obviously have a lot of loyalty to your country, and at that point, their country was Britain. They were subjects of the king. So I think it was very hard for those people to say that we're going to step away from this, but I think they were being more true to themselves and more true to what they believed to be their natural rights. And so I think they felt that was more important than being true to king and country.
Yeah. Is it true that some of them had their property confiscated, their even family members imprisoned or even put to death after signing the Declaration of Independence? That to me is
I don't know about put to death. I'd have to look into those into that one.
Okay,
but it was a big risk. It was definitely a big risk. That some of them were we were in the midst of the revolution at the time. Some of them were, either they were living in British occupied areas or their family were in British occupied areas. So this was not something that they took lightly. This was a big risk that they were doing, but it just goes to show how much they believed it.
Yes, indeed. Jenna Winterly-Karras at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia is our guest today on Independence Day as we celebrate the 4th of July. And what exactly are we celebrating anyway? This is number 249, Jenna. Next year's the big one. And I know you're already getting ready for that one. But 249 years? Why do you think our particular form of government has lasted as long as it has when others, and I think there's not another country in the world that has had it last as long as ours. What do you attribute our longevity to?
Well, first of all, what they really put a lot of thought into when they wrote the Constitution to be able to amend it. They knew that what worked for them in 1787 wasn't going to work for us in 2025. So they believed in the wisdom of their descendants, and so they really did put those mechanisms in for the Constitution to grow and evolve and change, and it has. We have 27 amendments to the Constitution over the last 200 plus years. And so it's been, that elasticity has been really helpful. And I also think it's just the people of this country really believe in what they established, and it's been, time and again, have looked to the founders for inspiration, even when we're challenging the norm. So, people who have fought for women's rights, or wanted to bring about the end of slavery, to earn civil rights, all kind of harken back to that founding document, that the Declaration, those founding ideals, those founding values, and so have built on it. And so it's not, we don't need to change it. We just need to help it grow and evolve and be a better version of what it was yesterday. Yeah. And so I think that's really, really inspiring.
I love it. I always get really frustrated when I see the studies about how little we know about our history and civics in general. And it's very sad to see how few of us really understand and appreciate and take to heart what the documents mean and why they matter so much to our democratic form of government. I got to ask you, Jen, why does it matter that we know this stuff in 2025 that happened 249 years ago?
Well, because is. I mean, it's where we came from, and and in order, like I said, the Constitution gives us a lot of rights. I like to think about the First Amendment as not only your right, but an incredible tool to speak out, speak your mind, speak fight for what you believe in. And so, if you don't know that you have those rights, how can you bring about change? So I think that that's a really important thing to just kind of understand, not only where we came from, just to kind of have that knowledge, but then understand like what you can do. And also it just makes you, I think understanding the facts and the history, helps you when you're having a conversation, especially with somebody you disagree with, because like you can see where they're coming from, you can see their side, but you also have that kind of meat in your own argument, and you can, have more civilized and more, productive dialogues. And I think that that's really important too.
Jenna Winterly-Karras at the National Constitution Center, Philadelphia, on Independence Day. This is a special edition of the Noon Report, and we're setting aside our regular programming today to talk a little bit about America, the birth of America, and the founding fathers and the Declaration of Independence. I always like to ask someone this question who does this for a living. When you look at those sacred documents, what are some of the most enduring truths, whether it's we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. What are some of the most enduring truths, Jenna, that we need to take to heart when we think about these sacred documents and as we celebrate another birthday for this country?
Yeah, I mean, I think they said it really well. So I don't know if I can, phrase it better than the Declaration of Independence. But just that idea that we have those natural rights, that everyone is equal, that everyone has the same opportunities, that everyone, we're all people. We all kind of are in this together. I think that those, are really great values that, our country was established on, and they're important to celebrate.
Yeah, I was just in Boston, got to see the whole Paul Revere and Paul Revere's ride, and that was one of my favorite stories from the Revolutionary War. I got to ask you, what's your favorite story when you think about the Founding Fathers or the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution? Anyone in particular that resonates with you?
That's a hard one. There's so many good ones. But I think that, moving through history and kind of hearkening back to the founding, but also using it, like I said, to build and get new rights. So I would say the women's suffrage movement and the way that they, those women who in the late 19th and early 20th century were fighting for their rights. They, had that Seneca Falls Convention, and they used the words of the Declaration. They said all men and women are created equal. And they had incredible tactics. There were different, some women were appealing to Congress, some women were taking the state route, some women were, just kind of doing PR campaigns, and they were selling salt and pepper shakers, and so I think that just kind of taking that Constitution that was written, 100 years earlier by, exclusively men, and using it as a tool to, make their voice heard and adding to it, I think is one of my favorite stories. I'm not going to say it's like picking your favorite kid, but
exactly.
I think
maybe not fair to ask someone like you in your capacity.
But that's a really inspiring one.
At the museum experience, can you just talk a little bit about what that is in conjunction with the National Constitution Center?
Sure. The National Constitution Center is a museum on Independence Mall. So we are just steps away from the Liberty Bell, Independence Hall, and the museum experience is really kind of everything that's encompassed with a museum visit. So we greet you when you come in. We kind of let you know what there is as you explore the museum. There's fantastic volunteers and staff members who will tell you about the different artifacts on display or lead programs. We do trivia. We have all the state flags up, so we have a great Fun with Flags program. So we just really want to make sure that every visitor coming to the center has a really great experience, and we spark your curiosity about the Constitution. You're not going to leave here with a PhD on constitutional history, but if your interest has been sparked, if you want to go home and learn something more about, Frederick Douglass or, Mary Beth Tinker, like, some of these different figures throughout American history that, you do that. And so that's our job.
Yeah. Philadelphia's own Ben Franklin, born and bred, is my favorite of the Founding Fathers. I should add mothers in there as well. But
Sure.
Do you have a favorite, and I don't want to use the word character, but do you have a favorite person who was instrumental in the formation of this country? And if you do, can you tell us why?
Yeah. Well, I do have to say Philadelphia that was Ben Franklin's home for many years. He was not born here, so I do want to, I don't want to mislead anybody.
Thank you for clarifying.
Boston would be very upset with us about that one. Again, it's hard to say. I think there's so many unsung heroes in the story of the Constitution, people like Justin Dart, who, fought for the ADA, people like Bayard Rustin, who organized the March on Washington. These are names that, not everyone knows. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important to read those stories of kind of all of the heroes from American history.
Sure, yeah. What do you hope, and then I'll let you go after this, Jenny. You've been very kind with your time today. What do you hope people will discover when they visit? I had the chance last summer for the first time to visit the National Constitution Center. If you're a history buff, if you appreciate and love civics, you will just be overwhelmed and just fascinated by what is in there. What do you hope people will walk away from a visit to the National Constitution Center?
I hope that they see a story of somebody who came before them and are inspired. So, Harriet Scott petitioned for her freedom, or, Mary Beth Tinker, wanted to speak out against the war. And I hope that they kind of see themselves in that story and say, you don't have to be a Ben Franklin or a George Washington. Those guys are great to celebrate, but, it can also be a person that, kind of just sees something and says something and decides to fight. And so I hope that they see themselves in that story, that, this really is a country that was, created by all of us. We're all founders of this country because we all make our mark on it. And so that's what I really hope.
I love it. The unsung heroes matter as much, don't they? Yeah. A breakup letter from Thomas Jefferson. I'm never going to forget that one. That was awesome. Thank you so much, Jenna.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Happy 4th of July.
All right. That is Jenna Winterly-Karras at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. Let's talk more about that breakup letter from Thomas Jefferson that Winterly-Karras had referenced, also known as the Declaration of Independence. The following's a sound collage, and it's compliments of a recent History Channel documentary on the Founding Fathers and the document that declared our independence from Great Britain.
The Declaration of Independence, for me, is one of the best pieces of writing I've ever seen.
It's a revolutionary document for a revolutionary statement.
You cannot help but be stirred when you read those words.
Thomas Jefferson's writing is absolutely magnificent. And when he wrote, "Behold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal," that was the first time anybody had bothered to write that down.
And then you turn the clock back and think of when he was writing, how young he was, what a statement it was given the history of the world at that point. And you feel the excitement of being on the cusp of something so profound that it's hard to put it into words.
If you review our Declaration of Independence, it has those beautiful words about all men are created equal and governments are formed among men to represent the people. It was a good statement of what we were all about. And that's the only thing people remember about the Declaration of Independence, that it was about all men are created equal. But it's really roughly a 28-count indictment against King George. And therefore, because of the way in which the British Crown treated us, we now declare that we are a free country, and we want to let you know why. Now, if we're going to have a war, we're going to have a war.
In 1776, you have the Continental Congress meeting in Philadelphia, debating a unified position for the colonies with respect to the hostilities that have already broken out. And the fundamental issue between them is, are they fighting for their rights as Englishmen within the British Empire, or are they going to fight for independence? And they're seriously divided. People who are perfectly willing to resist the tyranny of the British government are not necessarily willing to strike for independence. But there's a groundswell in favor of it, I think, in large measure because they recognize that having provoked the lion this far, there's no going back.
All of a sudden, you have this group of people who are going, no, we're not part of some great chain of being with the king at the top of it. We are free people. We can vote for who we want to have in charge. And we're not going to tolerate you telling us that we have some class status we have to be trapped in. It says, we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, meaning that Parliament in London, the King himself, the courts cannot interfere and take away your rights because the state can't take power from us. Even to this day, it's probably the most central difference between America and every other country in the world.
It goes well beyond what was needed in order to declare independence. It establishes a philosophical basis for a civil democracy in which all persons are guaranteed rights by virtue of their personhood.
This political genius, not just in Jefferson, but in Adams and all the other people who collected here, they saw a new time for humankind, which is that we can be free and that we can make decisions for ourselves.
That sound courtesy of the History Channel. If you're just joining us, I'm Bob Price. Welcome aboard. This is a special 4th of July edition of the Noon Report, and we want to close today's broadcast by airing a special edition of Breakpoint, which is aired every day during the Noon Report. This particular edition was recorded a couple of years ago and says something rather profound about Independence Day. Take a listen.
What is the basis of our identity as a nation? Today, of all days, is a good day to reflect on that. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. This is Breakpoint. 11 years ago today, Chuck Colson delivered a Breakpoint commentary on what would be his last July 4th holiday. In it, Chuck reflected on the basis of our national identity. Specifically, he recognized that the only true way to ground the ideals found in the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal and possess certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, is if they are indeed endowed by their Creator. The stunning clarity of the Declaration of Independence in stating that rights are granted ultimately by God and not the state is something that's far too often forgotten today, if not entirely dismissed. So, for July 4th, here's Chuck Colson.
The great British intellectual G.K. Chesterton wrote that America is the only nation in the world that is founded on a creed. Think about that for a moment. Other nations were founded on the basis of race or by the power of kings or emperors who accumulated lands and the peasants who inhabited those lands. But America was, and is to this day, different. It was founded on a shared belief, or as Chesterton said, a creed. And what is that creed that sets us apart? It's the eloquent, profound, simple statement penned by Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'll never forget when I graduated from Brown University during the Korean War, I couldn't wait to become a Marine officer, to give my life, if necessary, to defend that creed. To defend the idea that our rights come from God Himself and are not subject to whims of governments or tyrants. That humans ought to be free to pursue their most treasured hopes and aspirations. Well, perhaps some 230 years later, we take these words for granted, but in 1776, they were earth-shaking, indeed revolutionary. Yet today, they are in danger of being forgotten altogether. According to Gallup, 66% of American adults have no idea that the words "we hold these truths" come from the Declaration of Independence. Even worse, only 45% of college seniors know that the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are proclaimed in the Declaration. As America grows more and more diverse culturally, religiously, ethnically, it's critical we embrace the American creed. America's always been a melting pot. But what is the pot that holds our multicultural stew together? Chesterton said the pot's original shape was traced on the lines of Jeffersonian democracy, a democracy founded on those self-evident truths expressed in the Declaration of Independence. And as Chesterton remarked, the pot must not melt. Abraham Lincoln understood this so very well. For him, the notion that all men are created equal was the electric cord in that declaration that links the hearts of patriotic and liberty-loving men together, that will link those patriotic hearts as long as the love of freedom exists in the minds of men throughout the world. So go to the 4th of July parade, go to the neighborhood barbecue, and enjoy the hot dogs and apple pie. But here's an idea for you. Why not take time out at the picnic to read the Declaration of Independence aloud with your friends and your neighbors? Listen and thrill to those words that bind us together as a nation of freedom-loving people. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These are the words Americans live for, and if necessary, die for.
That was Chuck Colson reflecting on the legacy of today's holiday. From all of us at the Colson Center, have a blessed and happy July 4th. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
All right, thank you, John. A special edition of Breakpoint that was recorded a couple of years ago featuring the late, great Chuck Colson. And with that, our time is up. Thank you for being a part of our special Independence Day edition of the Noon Report. If you missed any of today's broadcast, you can go online to our podcast page and click the special features icon to hear it in its entirety. Again, thank you for joining us today and happy 4th of July. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.